In this session, which will go from 10:20 to 11, we will again welcome the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury and his team. This is on the area of Treasury. Mr. Secretary, can you walk us through your opening remarks briefly?
Yes, Chairman. We are going to study the areas covered by the Treasury. We are responsible for 3 areas: government revenue and financial control, intra-government central support services, and also repair and maintenance of government property. In 2015-16, the total recurrent expenditure for those 3 areas stands at $7.219 billion. With regard to the different items, revenue and financial control takes up $3.8 billion, intra-government support services $2.4 billion, and maintenance and repair for government property $1 billion. In the coming year, we have the following main tasks. Number 1, we'll continue to act according to the principle of prudent financial management in order to control growth in expenditure and manage resource allocation. We'll also consider proposals for major investment and loans in order to support economic and social development. In the second quarter, the FST Bureau will consult the industry on the automatic exchange of financial account information. And also, we will table a bill in 2016 so that hopefully the LegCo can pass it within the session. It is like this: to combat cross-boundary tax evasion, the international community is enhancing the standards for exchange of tax information, and Hong Kong cannot lag behind because we are an international financial center. We have committed to the OECD that once we have the legislative framework, we will adopt the new standard on exchange of tax information in 2018. The new standard will make a long-term impact, and there will be specific requirements for the examination and reporting of account information by financial institutions and the consequences of non-compliance. Time is pressing. We will work to our level best, and I hope members will support us. I'd like to talk about the comprehensive avoidance of double taxation agreements. We are expanding the network in order to cover the major trade and investment partners of Hong Kong, and where necessary, we will sign independent exchange of tax information agreement with particular taxation jurisdictions in order to comply with international requirements. In order that user pays items will not become subsidies, bureaus and departments will continue to review the charges and fees under the jurisdiction, including those related to people's livelihood. When we do so, we will look at the scope of service, people's affordability and acceptability, and also members' views in order to make proposals for fee adjustment. We will appropriately increase fees at the appropriate time. We will not go for hefty increases at one go. We'll also strictly control costs in order to minimize the necessity of fee increase. As the FS announced in the budget, he has agreed to set up the future fund. We will very soon discuss with the Hong Kong MA the specifics and arrangements for setting up the future fund. We would hope to implement the relevant savings scheme this year. Lastly, where appropriate, we will move non-location specific government offices away from the CBD in order to release precious land for commercial use, so that there will be also more job opportunities and economic opportunities in other areas. The Trade and Industry Tower in Mong Kok and government offices will start to be moved to the Kai Tak development area in the middle of the year so that we can release 18,000 square meters of floor area for commercial use. We are also taking forward the removal plan for the 3 towers in Wan Chai. The 29 departments in the 3 towers will move to Kowloon West, Cheung Sha Wan, Kai Tak, Chai Wan, and Cheung Kwan O in different phases. And when departments move out, we will rent out the floor area available so that we can release 175,000 square meters of office area for Wan Chai. And when all the departments have moved out, we will sell those buildings. Thank you. We'll like to take questions. We have this session only until 11 o'clock. We only have 35 minutes, and 7 members have indicated their intention to speak. I will go for 4-minute intervals, but I will be very strict with the time. If they cannot answer the questions, we will ask for written replies. Sin Chung Kai, Kenneth Leung, Kwok Ha Ki, Wong Kwok Heng, Ann Chang, Chen Chi Chun, and Albert Chan. I'd like to ask about the future fund and also Mr. Jeffrey Lam's question 59 or 075. This one is on the future fund. I think this is the answer giving more details. I have looked at the answer, but I don't think you have told us all the details of the objective and policy on the future fund. In fact, there is a lot of views about the future fund. We are worried that it is an excuse that the government will just put away money and not spend it where it should be spent. If you use the money for social investment, maybe the return will be bigger than financial return. What is financial return? My understanding is, as you said, if you invest in the future fund, there may be 3%, 4% interest rate. But as a society, if you invest in it early, there will be more social return. In the past 7-8 years, Mr. C.K. Chan, you were the secretary, and also when the John Zhang has been the secretary, financial secretary, he could only do 2 things. 1, to dish out goodies, and 2, to put away money. I can't see any large-scale or long-term investment in social strategies. You have not shown the resolve to do so. In the community, people are worried that the future fund will become an excuse not to spend money where you should spend it. I understand that the PS has done a detailed study, and detailed reports have shown that in a number of years, we will not be able to make ends meet. That is why you are making preparations for the future. Very often, if you look at our hospitals and other infrastructure, they are quite backward, and you are not spending to improve them. So can you not talk about the policy objective of the future fund? Secretary, every time when we write the budget, you can see that we take a multi-pronged approach to develop the economy and to support social development. Talking about infrastructure investment, the building of hospitals and housing, I myself think that in the past few years, we have been increasing resources, and the government has put in a lot of investment. We are talking about tens of billions of dollars that will be spent on the building of hospitals. Now, why is it that sometimes the community thinks we are moving slowly? That might not be necessarily related to the availability of financial resources. Sometimes it's because of the land or other areas of planning. Coming back to this issue, the future fund, it is not one way to put away money and not spend it. We have the financial reserve, which will allow us to have money for the future. But we think that there may be the appearance of a structural deficit. If we don't do anything now, the projection is for a structural deficit to appear. No, in the past 7 years, Secretary, we had a structural surplus. Well, you are looking back, you are looking with hindsight, but if you look forward, if you look at the demographics, the structural deficit will certainly happen. And today we want to do something to get prepared. Mr. Kenneth Leung, in 3B of the speech, you talk about the automatic exchange of financial account information, and you say you want to submit a bill in 2016 and you hope to have it passed within the session. I am very worried
that the biggest opposition will come from the business, banking, and other people in the business sector because they are the people with vested interests. But you have said, you have promised the OECD that you can adopt it in 2018. What if you cannot complete it this year? How can you convince the members from the banking and CNI area to support this? Thank you for the question. With regard to this automatic exchange of financial account information, first of all, we take a proactive attitude. First of all, we have to comply with international standards, and secondly, we take the initiative to explain it to Hong Kong's business sector. In the past 1 or 2 years, we have been working very hard on this. On the consultation this time around, in fact, we have done a lot of groundwork already. I dare not say that the legislative process will be easy because it will involve a lot of sensitive matters, say, for example, whether information can be channeled overseas and how it will be used. But then we would try our very best to protect people by providing safeguards. I think it's a difficult task, but no matter what, we have to go ahead with this, or else we will be blacklisted by the international community. So we are going to get ahead with this, and we will try our best to lobby the banking and the business sector. In fact, it's not only the business people. Hong Kong people may also have things to say about the legislation. We'll try our very best to do lobbying work. But you have promised the OECD that you would do it in 2018. Now, if indeed we can't do it and we are blacklisted, what are the dire consequences for Hong Kong? If you remember, in 2007, G20 said that Hong Kong would be blacklisted, but because of intervention of the country, this did not come to pass. But afterwards, we used CDTA in order to address the international concern. If we are blacklisted as a taxation territory, it will affect the operation of Hong Kong as a financial center. This is unacceptable. So we must do something to comply with the exchange of tax information requirement. We have to do it well. 3E, the Future Fund. I think you did not give it a good name. It is just an investment program. Society sees that you are setting up a fund, and many civic groups have set up a concern group on the future fund, etc., because they are afraid you may not be using money wisely. But in fact, it is a savings program. Why don't you just call it a future investment program? I mean, give it a good name. I have spent a lot of time to explain things on your behalf, but I think you have taken a bad name for it. Secretary. Well, people may have different interpretations of any name. In some other places, we have got the Future Fund as well. We have thought about other names, but I think this is the most direct. I think the important thing is for us to explain to people what this is about. To answer Mr. Sin Chung Kai, also, this is not a way to put away money. Dr. K.K. Kwok, I hope the Secretary will not be so light-hearted. I hope he will indeed answer our questions. I have asked the government about this, whether it be the Future Fund or the AA, with regard to the issue of bonds and not giving dividend to government. I think you are doing the same thing because you want to bypass LegCo and you want to adopt tricky means in order to do something that the public may not support, especially the 3RS for the airport. You refuse to answer my question, but in fact, the biggest issue is that when you formulate future financial plans, including the structural deficit you talked about, but instead we have always had a structural surplus. Every time you project a small surplus and then in the end the surplus would be so inflated. You want to create a false phenomenon, and now you have too much money, so you want to dish out candies, but then you do not make long-term commitment. the project will cost $1.5 billion and the community does not support it and you have not resolved the airspace problem. However, you are taking the lead to do something dishonorable.
You get around the FC and also for issuing of debt at the end. Everybody knows the SARG is the only shareholder, so all the people of Hong Kong will have to shoulder the debt. The government deliberately make financial arrangements like this. You just adopt tricky means. Now you are the policy secretary, you are an academic. I don't know whether you are. I'm not quite sure, but you make use of such means to get around this council and avoid monitoring by this council and by the public. And you tell the public that you have a good record, you resort to tricky means even if people don't agree. Those who don't obey us will be driven away, and I will not listen to them. Is it your attitude? In the previous session, I didn't answer Dr. Kwok's question, and I didn't see any relationship between that and the Financial Services Division. And this question is not directly related to the Treasury Division either. Chairman, my question is about the future fund. Didn't you ask me on issuing of bonds or debt? Well, I thought that you were asking about the airport. As for the future fund, I've already said that part of the reserves will be put into long-term investment for the purpose of enhancing the rate of return to address structural deficits. This is to bring relief to the structural deficits which may arise in the future. You mentioned structural surplus, but that was something in the past. In the long-term financial planning committee, there was an analysis on change in population, a change in financial structure, and structural deficits will occur, and we need to deal with that in the future. Now, concerning the consultation document on future fund, you have several options. You have adopted an administrative means and get around this council. This is just like building the runway. I don't agree with you. The future fund. Before I move on, Ms. Emily Lau and Lee Chak Yan are here, so I have to draw a line there. I'm really very strict. Mr. Wong Kok Heng, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome more smiles on the face of the Policy Secretary. You are the god of fortune, and if you are crying, then we'll be sad. In Para D, you commented on fees and charges. Now you said that we will appropriately, at appropriate time, increase fees and charges, and there will not be substantial adjustments at one go. Now that's the emphasis. I want to ask, the FS in the previous financial year said that if adjustments were to be made, there were 4 principles to follow. To save time, I don't repeat those principles. With the administration, adhere to the principles put forward by the FS, including listening to the view of this council, or views of this council. Recently, the Food and Health Bureau made proposals to substantial increases to cremation fees and burial fees. They will be increased by 10 times or 100 times. And recently, there was a rumor that the cost for inspection of pork and beef will be increased by 3 times and 10 times, respectively. That will seriously affect the people's livelihood. I am taking up the matter seriously with the Bureau and the FEHD. The Bureau said that it would consider my proposal, but I don't know the outcome of that consideration. Now, can you show a smile, Mr. Chan? so that we can listen to a good reply from you. If the cost of inspecting pork by 3 times and beef by 10 times, then we won't have a smile on our face. Concerning the principles for adjustment of fees and charges, do they still apply? Well, we adhere to the principle of the user's pay. In doing adjustments, we have to take into account various factors, and I've already read out those factors. I do not repeat them. We raise this point specifically because many fees and charges have not been adjusted over a decade or more than that. As an approach to public finance, the user pays is a good policy and a good principle, and I hope to adhere to that as far as possible. But in having said that, in making adjustments, we will not make any adjustments at one go. We need to take into account the situation, people's affordability, and also the views of this council. We respect your views. But I hope you understand that some fees and charges have not been adjusted over many years. That may have adverse impacts on the provision of public service. I think 2 points are very important there. It would not be done at one go. I hope that can be put on record. The FS mentioned 4 principles. He said that if cost is to be recovered by 40%, fees adjustments should not be more than 20%. If to cover cost 40 to 70%, adjustment would only be 15% or less. And if cost recovery is more than 70%, adjustment will be less than 10% or below, with 10% below. Now I read it out because I hope that Ann Chang, Wong Kok Heng, your time is up. Ms. Ann Chang. I have 2 suggestions and 1 question in relation to paragraphs D to F. Concerning the future fund, I'm glad to hear that. I propose an infant fund. I think that matches my expectation. I think that we share the same goal. Or we have the same thinking. Now, the future fund is to deal with aging population, expected slowdown in economy. The future fund is to save up for the rainy days. That's a good thing. I have made a suggestion, and I hope the Secretary will consider this. We don't know the future of the economy. Can part of the future fund be earmarked for the future generations so as to plan for them, because in the future population will be aging and the younger generations will have a heavier burden. It's said in the speech that in the CBD, some government buildings will be vacated. There will be very good commercial sites. Government apartments will be relocated. Such sites will be sold in the future. Well, we don't need a lot of money. The Treasury has a lot of money. After the relocation of government departments, can these sites be put into the future fund so that there will be rental returns for the future generations? I don't like to sell these precious sites. As for the user pays principle, many people begin to worry that the government is now going to increase fees and charges. Cremation fee will be increased by several times, from $90 odd to $6,000 odd. People are worried that in the future, when they go to public hospitals, that will also follow the user pay principle. I just want to know your general direction in this regard. The future fund is about future uses. We're talking about $200 billion. That is equivalent to half or less than half of our annual expenditure. And with a better investment return, there may be better financial support for the future. The money will not be spent on recurrent expenditures. Otherwise, the amount of money will not be enough. Now, when there are financial deficits, usually they will be caused by recurrent expenditures. As for government land in the CBD, we relocate the department so that we can relieve the land for business uses. If we sell the sites to a business organization so that they can make use of the land, that will be a better support for the business sector. It's not about money. It's a policy to enable the business sector to make better use of the land. As for the user pays principle, this is a principle, but different fees and charges will be considered in the light of relevant policies. As for public hospitals, it will not fees and charges will not come under the user pays. Next, Ms. Chen Chi-Chen. Chairman, a question in relation to Para 3D concerning the user pays principle. You and me are against it. They implement this blindly. This year, several departments have come before various panels and they raised to increase cremation fees to $6,000 odd. People can't have a peaceful death. During SARS, government was poor. The government didn't consider raising this. Now they are going to increase this. More than 100 items under FCD will increase fees and charges. Even adoption fee by the will be raised by the SWD. People want to do good, but they have to pay more. You should not blindly implement this principle. The government departments are saying that the FSTB asks us to deliver the goods. There is no sympathy at all. Maybe Dr. Koh's department or bureau is very obedient. The cremation fees will increase. The AFCD will increase more than 100 items. With the panel has opposed that. That is across the party line. The opposition is across the party line. And we also oppose the increase in adoption fee. What is your next step? Will you bring the bill before us, or you stop and think and don't force the government departments, the bureaus to impose this, and that will make the departments and bureaus difficult, and that will worsen the relationship between the executive and the legislature. The user pays principle is something I want members to agree with. In the provision of public service, if we uphold this principle, that will make the provision of service more reasonable, and that is fair to the taxpayers. That's an important principle. When we discuss the matter with members do express their views, and we've heard members' views, and we'll take into account members' views. Let me now turn to the Permanent Secretary, and she will speak on the numbers. On the whole, in 97-98, the government revenue arising from these thousands of items is just $12 billion. That was in 97-98. Such items accounted for 4.2% of government revenue. That was 1997, $12 billion. In 2013-14, let us don't take into account inflation. The revenue from these items were just $11 billion, a decline. That was only 2.4% of our total revenue. In the past, in 97, it was 4-point-something. Some fees and charges which have not been changed over a decade, the rates of recovery are low. We need to review those items. The review, the adjustment do not imply an increase. We reviewed 20-odd items, and there were increases and decreases. Now that is a small sum. It doesn't harm at all. We oppose the items you have proposed. How will you handle that? Will you follow the department? Will you force the department bureaus to ram it through?
Who will take the question? Well, let us not say whether we are going to force them through. Let's go. We'll continue to discuss with LC members. Next one, Mr. Albert Chan. Chairman. Now it's time for me to answer the questions I wanted to ask just now. Secretary, I hope you will understand the concerns of the public. You look after the Treasury. A lot of Hong Kong's expenditure and income will be watched over by you. I'm not talking about you yourself, but then your bureau. If you look at the airport, we have the Civil Aviation Department and also the Airport Authority. It seems the airport is like an independent kingdom. The CAD has built a dance room in its offices, and then the Audit Commission took it to task, then it changed it into a Tai Chi practice ground. In other words, it acts like a super kingdom. It is using super state-of-the-art monitors and also extra large offices. But then when the AA goes for the 3RS, it doesn't have any respect for established mechanisms. We asked the CE, but the CE could not answer any questions. I was asking you about the financial plan and cost effectiveness of the 3RS, because a lot of commentaries have pointed out that a lot of the information is misleading. So as the person watching over government finances, what do you think about this procedure that seeks to bypass LegCo vis-a-vis investment and financing? So I will give you time to comment on your own role. Is it that you have your job taken away from you, and even your dignity is taken away from you? As an academic, you should have some dignity and you should really work for the benefit of Hong Kong people. With regard to the economic effectiveness, the AA has been doing different studies over the years. The government looks at the economic effectiveness of the AA from a high angle, and we agree that we need the 3RS, or else the capacity of the airport will be saturated very soon. No, I'm telling you that a lot of the economic assessment reports, I've told you that a lot of the information there is misleading. You have been very eloquent before, but now you seem to stutter, so I think you are hiding something. It seems the return rate is said to be 3-point-something%, but people have said that China will only enjoy a growth rate of 7% in the next 20 years. The discerning and those who understand economic development will know that these figures are bloated and are misleading. You watch over public finances. Will you look closer at the information and give your independent view, so that they cannot do whatever they want and pour public money into the sea? We are talking about $1.5 billion. And also the CAD seems to be a kingdom of its own. Would you like him to answer you? Well, you cannot have regulation over anybody, it seems. Well, I don't have all the economic figures with me, but we have looked at the assessment and we agree that this will be of great benefit to Hong Kong. As for the financial arrangement, I think the TH Bureau has provided a lot of information. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, I have already drawn a line before you came in because this session will have to end at 11 a.m. Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. Talking about the future fund, I'd like to thank the PS for coming to the Pan Democrat meeting to give explanation. But it did not achieve a lot. I asked the FS this question myself. We hope the government will spend more money on infrastructure, including medical services, education, and welfare. The FS said we have already increased the commitment by a wide margin. But I said if you start with a small denominator, then whatever you are spending will not be enough. We are talking about providing free kindergarten education, but you are unwilling. People have to wait 6 hours or more for A&E department service. So we think you have to do much more. However, you are now putting away the money. If you have done a good job with everything else, then we understand why you want to save up money. And I don't understand why you don't want to listen to the public. And we are talking about universal retirement protection, but you are unwilling again. And these are very fundamental conflicts. Well, maybe some members here support you, but we have heard many members of the public comment that you should invest much more on infrastructure or social infrastructure, but still you refuse to do it. Therefore, there will be continuous disputes at LegCo. Do you understand it? Secretary, Ms. Lau. When we handle finances, we have to look at what we should do in the short term and the long term. Every time we prepare the budget, we would look at recurrent and non-recurrent expenditure, and we will review all items. If there are aspirations in the community, which we also agree with, we have always increased resources. In the budget, the FS has said that we have increased commitment much more than the growth in GDP in the past few years. But we also have to look at our savings. If we don't, we will leave too little resources for the future. That's why we are proposing a future fund. We hope to handle this with a long-term angle. Okay, you want to save up money and you want to look at this for the long term, but why don't you apply the same kind of thinking for social infrastructure? But you only go for one-off relief measures. You only distribute goodies. But you should not be using the money for that. You should invest in long-term medical, social, education, and welfare services. Don't just give out one-off reliefs. You are not helping the long-term development of Hong Kong. Do you understand it? Secretary, in terms of medical and welfare services, we have plowed in a lot of resources. We are aware of the aging of the population and social needs, and will continue to invest in those services. But do you also agree that many members differ from your view? All these years, you have neglected our demands. Why is it that you don't listen to us? In fact, the government will have to consider many different views. And that is why we have invested much more in many of the service areas. But of course, you will have higher and higher aspirations. Do you only listen to the business community? What about we who represent the community as a whole? Of course not. In terms of the allocation of government resources, we have increased a lot for medical, welfare, and education services. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, you are the last speaker. Well, actually, the FS has is not qualified to be the FS. Neither does the SFST, because your finance management philosophies are all wrong. First of all, you never make the right projections. 2, you play tricks. 3, you suppress social services. And 4, you exploit your staff. Number 1, you are famous for making wrong projections. This year, you have actually $90 billion. And that can cover 25% of the government expenditure. So the wrong projection is almost 25%. And 2, you play tricks. You talk about 60 billion, but we talk about 90 billion because you put 27 billion in the housing reserve. And again, the future fund will be set up to hide away your reserves. You say 1/3 of the surplus would be put into the future fund. You know that there will be surpluses, and therefore you say 1/3 of it will be put into the future fund. This is how you are playing tricks with the figures. I think you know that you are going to make wrong projections again and again, so you expect surpluses. And you are also stingy with social services because you are not increasing those services according to demand, especially for medical services. You know the population is aging, but you are only increasing the expenditure for the hospital authority by only 0.4%. This is outrageous. You make wrong projections, you play tricks, you are mean and stingy towards the public, and fourth, you exploit your staff. You have contract out staff. They have not got any wage increase. Their wages are reviewed every 2 years according to the statutory minimum wage. Don't you think you are mean and stingy? Maybe the GPA can answer us? Do you admit that in your procurement contract you don't state that there should be annual wage increases, so that in the end the services you procure are such that the workers only have a wage review every 2 years? Well, you may say sometimes it is less than 2 years. On the 1st of May, you adjust the SMW, so there may be a wage increase, but then they have to wait long and hard. You only follow the SMW. Don't you think you are exploiting your staff? So number one, wrong projection, mean and stingy, and also playing tricks, and secondly, staff exploitation. Secretary, first question, whether we have any transparency with regard to government revenue and expenditure. In fact, I can say we have 100% transparency. Well, yes, you are 100% transparent when you make wrong projections, but you also play tricks. You put 27 billion into the housing reserve. So are you also playing tricks under the public glare? We have explained that in order to support PRH building in the future, we need to put away some provision. Now, without a policy, we should still put away some money first, so that when we have the policy, we have money for it. This is in compliance with prudential financial management. So I can't say, and I don't agree that we are playing tricks. In fact, you know all the figures. Why do we have a future fund? It is again that with transparency, we allow the public to know how we are going to manage the resources. We will continue at 11:10.
11:10